You probably already know that an engine's lifespan can vary greatly from one owner to another, even with the exact same power unit in a similar model. This is absolutely true. Usually, such differences are due to several key reasons that not all drivers are aware of. Hey friends! In this video, we'll discuss the factors that most seriously impact engine lifespan. And of course, we'll give drivers tips on how to maximize their engine's life. Without further ado, let's get to it. Most often, the lifespan of a new engine and the quality of its future operation are determined by the owner during the break-in period. This is especially relevant for new cars. A popular myth actively spread by car dealership managers is that modern engines don't need additional breaking in. The argument is that modern engines are vastly different from last century's designs, boasting high-quality manufacturing, assembly, fit, and tuning of all parts and components. Furthermore, there's a belief that cars are broken in at the factory. Let's be clear, if you're buying a regular passenger car, not a sports car like a Ferrari, Bugatti, or Lamborghini, then no one specifically breaks in that car under factory conditions. The most you can expect is a so-called cold break-in. Simply put, this process involves rotating the engine without starting it to allow parts to wear in and to check the power unit. And believe me, no one did that procedure with your car. Therefore, you must break in your car, and the owner does it themselves after purchase. Of course, you could ignore the break-in period, and the engine would likely still last at least through the warranty period. However, it's important to remember that even from the very beginning of operation, a new but improperly broken-in engine might lose some power and consume more oil and fuel. Problems will only progress more intensely later on, as premature wear of the piston group will take its toll, and the overall engine lifespan will significantly decrease. So, we highly recommend learning about the break-in process and never neglecting this crucial step. Moving on, the efficiency of various systems determines not only the engine's stable operation, but also its lifespan. It often happens that an engine runs relatively normally, even while the fuel delivery, electronic control, or cooling systems are malfunctioning. Some drivers simply don't notice problems due to lack of experience, while others just ignore the issue and delay diagnosis. You need to understand that any deviation from the norm is a reason for an immediate visit to a service station. Otherwise, even minor malfunctions can later lead to more serious breakdowns. In other words, ignoring even small problems reduces the overall lifespan of the unit. For example, problems in the cooling system often cause the engine to overheat, and this doesn't always have to be critical. While a significant temperature increase will immediately put the engine out of commission, localized overheating usually goes unnoticed, but still causes significant damage to the power unit. Furthermore, a malfunctioning thermostat can lead to the engine constantly running cold and not reaching its optimal operating temperature. In such a case, the engine operates far from optimal conditions. Clearances are increased, and fuel doesn't burn completely. As for the fuel system, special attention should be paid to fuel injectors. A distorted spray pattern due to contamination can lead to very unpleasant consequences for the engine. To summarize, to extend the lifespan of your power unit, you need periodic injector cleaning and a computerized engine diagnostic. The check engine light doesn't always come on, and running the engine on an overly rich or lean mixture negatively impacts engine life. This approach allows you to detect sensor malfunctions in time, avoid fuel mixture issues, and keep your injectors in working order. Next up is a simple but vital piece of advice: proper selection and timely replacement of engine oil. First and foremost, you need to start with the correct oil for your vehicle. The oil must be high quality and comply with all the engine manufacturer's requirements and recommendations. Simultaneously, when choosing, pay attention to seasonality, meaning use lubricant with a viscosity that matches the actual operating conditions. For example, if summers in your region are very hot and winters are cold, then during summer, you'd use all-season oil with a viscosity index of 5W40 or 10W40, and with the onset of cold weather, you'd switch to 5W30. You also need to change your oil according to the schedule, but it's highly recommended to consider your individual operating conditions. So-called heavy-duty conditions require the driver to shorten the service interval. When should you change your oil more often? If your car primarily drives in the city at low speeds and low RP, miss. Frequent and short trips are common for your car. The engine, especially in winter, doesn't warm up properly and doesn't reach operating temperatures. The car spends a lot of time stuck in traffic, and the engine runs extensively at idle. And of course, if you regularly tow a trailer, carry heavy loads, and so on. For these reasons, the oil change intervals specified in the technical manual for repair and operation every 10,000 or 15,000 kilometers, or 12 months, can be considered a very average indicator. In practice, it's optimal to change the oil and filters every 8,000 to 9,000 kilometers for synthetics. Semi-synthetics should be changed even more frequently, every 5,000 to 7,000 kilometers. And of course, you need to monitor the oil level, as some engines, even new ones, can consume oil. Such consumption isn't a malfunction, but it obliges the driver to periodically check the level in the oil pan. Remember, in many engines, even a slight decrease in oil level leads to a significant increase in engine wear. In other words, if a driver doesn't account for their engine's specific characteristics, it usually negatively impacts the unit's lifespan. Now let's talk about engine warm-up, as this question causes a lot of debate. First of all, experienced drivers familiar with carbureted cars were used to warming up their vehicles before driving. Moreover, warming up was necessary in any season. With the advent of fuel injection replacing carbureted injection, the situation changed slightly. In this system, fuel enters the cylinders evenly, and all processes are controlled by the ECU. The unit operates smoothly, regardless of engine temperature. It's worth noting that after stricter environmental regulations and standards, modern car manuals usually state that warming up the engine at idle is simply not necessary. These recommendations are largely aimed at fuel economy and environmental protection, while the lifespan of the power unit is often relegated to a secondary concern. Without going into detail, engine parts are made of metal and various alloys. As you know, metals expand when heated. It's not hard to guess that engineers design engines so that their optimal operating mode is a full warm-up and reaching operating temperatures. Only in this mode can the power unit be loaded, as clearances return to normal after warming up, engine oil thins, and so on. If you consider that some parts inside the engine heat up faster, while others heat up a bit later, then you can draw one important conclusion. It is highly undesirable to increase engine loads without pre-warming, especially in winter. Just remember it, accept it, and stop arguing. Now let's talk about RPMs and gear selection in cars with manual transmissions or models, where the automatic transmission allows the driver to control it in manual mode. First and foremost, any engine dislikes extremes, that is, excessively high or excessively low RP miss. It's simple. Remember that driving at too low RPMs, lugging the engine, or conversely, at consistently high RPMs, also significantly impacts the engine's lifespan. To increase the lifespan of any engine, it's optimal to keep the tachometer needle in the mid-range, shifting gears promptly depending on road conditions, speed, engine load, and other individual factors. Also, to ensure the power unit lasts as long as possible, it's essential to mention the mandatory timely replacement of so-called consumables. First, both naturally aspirated and turbo engines need a constant flow of air, ideally clean air. If your air filter is dirty, the amount of air in the mixture can decrease, the engine will run on a rich mixture, fuel consumption will increase, and carbon deposits will form in the cylinders. And it's common knowledge that you should regularly check and replace your spark plugs on time. The lifespan of your engine heavily depends on the timely replacement of all consumables. Finally, let's conclude with another helpful tip. As you know, any problems in the fuel system lead to unstable engine operation. Debris and impurities in the fuel also cause certain harm to the engine. To prevent various contaminants from entering the system, several fuel filters are installed. Most often, these elements do a good job of cleaning, but that's not always the case. Specifically, the habit of driving with a nearly empty tank and running on fuel remnants shortens engine lifespan. This is because sediment and dirt accumulate at the bottom of the fuel tank during operation. Condensation can also collect. Over several years, enough of this debris can build up. It's quite obvious that when driving with an empty tank, this debris actively enters and clogs the fuel filters. Furthermore, some contaminants pass through the filtering element and enter the combustion chamber, forming deposits inside the engine. To prevent this, you should always keep your fuel level at least half full. This helps preserve the fuel pump and extends the filter's lifespan. In cold weather, it reduces condensation and also lowers the risk of unwanted impurities from the fuel tank entering the engine. Well, friends, I hope these tips were extremely useful for you. Write in the comments how you extend your engine's lifespan, and of course, like and subscribe to the channel. There's much more useful and interesting content ahead.